the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. Hi, everyone. Welcome. If you're new, I just want to say hello. My name is Katie Silcox. I am the founder and one of your lead teachers in the Ayurveda School, Shakti School programs. My background, I have a master's degree in Ayurvedic sciences. I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, but my heart and my passion really is for what I call feminine form Ayurveda, feminine form meditation, feminine form spirituality that also loves and holds the masculine. But most of us were taught methodologies from that more masculine perspective. And so to counterbalance that, we do a lot of feminine form. And so today really is an intro, I hope, for some of you. And for some of you, it's not an intro, but just a reminder of what feminine form meditation even means. And in a way, it's a misnomer because everything is feminine and masculine. Everything, right? And so feminine form is the way of working with meditation that honors your embodied experience. That means you get to be a human being with feelings. That means you have sensations, you have emotions, you have memories, you have all of this moving and pulsing and changing in your body and in your mind and in your heart. And so this form of meditation says, rather than making your thoughts and your feelings and your energies a problem, we're going to flip that. We're going to say, wait a minute, not only are your thoughts not the problem, not only are your emotions and your energies not the problem, but they can actually be a way of working with the mind where we use the movement and the changeability and the creativity and the wildness. Some of you women know what I'm talking about. We are changeable, wild, emotional creatures, right? We're going to actually use that to enter into a state of communion with our own body and with our own energy. We get on the same team as our mind. And we get on the same team as the parts of us that we think are problematic. We get on board with them. We say, hey, you get to be here. And so this way of meditating might be radically different, but it's existed in all of our cultures, whether you're from Africa, Asia, Europe, it's existed in all of our foremothers' cultures for thousands of years. All of our mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandmothers and forefathers have been working with what? Life, nature, energy, the seasons, and they've been doing what we might call magic, right? And so everyday magic is the type of meditation we're going to be teaching here today, where we get on board with how nature moves in our own bodies. And I'll give you guys this sort of 7-step process. I'm laughing because it could be 4 steps, it could be 2 steps, it could be 20,000 steps, but we've come up with a little easy way that if this is new for you, try it every day for 40 days. And then you own it, right? Then you can kind of understand it and then, move on or keep doing it. So let's go back to go forward. I know for some of you, this is totally new. And so meditation, we all know that it's really good for us, right? Like no one in the room thinks meditation is terrible. Most of the time, most of us understand that it's really great. And science supports this. Thousands of studies, both from India and Eastern countries, as well as Western medical studies, show that meditation, if we could put it in a bottle, it would be the number one best-selling pharmaceutical drug on the planet. It helps regulate the heart rate variability. It helps lower blood pressure. It helps build the immune system. It helps keep us youthful for as long as possible. It helps regulate the nervous system. It helps increase all of the factors of our gut microbiome. Literally, this is a miracle drug that I'm going to be teaching you about today. And guess what? It's FREE. You don't even have to sign up for Ayurveda school to get this. It's yours, right? This is totally free. It is your birthright to breathe and feel and become present. What's super curious, some of these studies show that this type of meditation that I'm sharing with you guys today actually has been shown to increase the brain's capacity to heal and wire new nerve patterns. Many of you have heard the phrase, what wires together, fires together, what fires together, wires together in our neurology. What does that mean? It means that we are thinking 95 to 99% of the exact same thoughts that we thought yesterday and the day before and the day before that and the day before that. And that is scary. And then we show up and we wonder why we don't feel differently and our lives aren't changing. And it's because we're literally the same creatures hoping for a different effect. How do these patterns get so wired into our brains? Well, from age 0 to 7, most of these neurological patterns of belief and understanding and perception of the world get hardwired into our brain. And we go into this at length in our year-long program, but just to understand, wow, from age 0 to 7, we consider that the preconscious or the subconscious realm. Most of us don't remember what happened from age 0 to 7. And when we do have strong memories from that time in our lives, they were usually from things that were really intense, intensely not so good, or intensely really good, right? You might remember an old auntie you had cooking you some beautiful meal, or you might remember like a pet you had. I know I remember this little collie I had named Jenny, and she's just like a little memory in my mind because I loved her so much, right? But I can't tell you much else, right? I've got about 10 to 20 really vivid memories, and the rest of it's who knows? We call that the subconscious realm. But guess what, guys? That subconscious realm is the wiring of our brain. And the ancient teachings understood what we're now beginning to start to taste in modern neuroscience. And that is most of what compels our behaviors and how we feel about our life is not even conscious. Right? That may sound like really bad news. And it is really bad news unless we do something every day that can actually turn back on the part of our brain that rewires new perceptions of reality, new ways of seeing the world. And guess what, guys? A feeling of hope that the future could hold something different from the past. So the yogis knew this. All the ancient mystics knew this. Whether you're Christian, Jewish, Islam, yogi, they all understood this. They understood that there was a way of turning back on the parts of our brain that go to sleep after the age 0 to 7 to 0 to 14. And those things are, you ready for it? Number 1, go out and fall in love with somebody. But that can bring a lot of problems. And it's not so easy to find somebody to fall in love with every day. So that's not the best methodology, right? Number 2, exercise. Exercise is something we talk about in Shakti School a little bit, but exercise has a very short half-life on turning that part of our brain back on. That's why you could go to a yoga class or take a walk or go on a jog or go to the gym, and you feel so much better 10 to 45 minutes after, right? But you all know that half-life is short. It just takes one bad email. It just takes your man saying one thing to you that you don't like, and then click, you're back in the old way. So exercise is a great way to turn back on that neurostructure that can rewire itself. But what the ancients understood is we have to couple our exercise with something else. So much of movement practices from spiritual traditions involved the missing link, which is devotion. When scientists are studying this now in the brain, they find that when you devote yourself to something bigger than your own self, when you give your life to something bigger than your ego, when you devote your heart to something that you love, whether it be God or a project or a child or a purpose, that turns these parts of our brains back on in a huge way that's actually sustainable. Now, it goes to sleep and comes back on and goes to sleep and comes back on. And that's why, in like many traditions, you would pray to God 50 times a day, right? It's just like that 1 minute of remembering. Now, of course, we're not a religion over here at Shakti School, and you don't even have to believe in God for any of this. You just need to devote yourself to something bigger than yourself. And so that can be anything that you like. It can be a heartfelt prayer for the world, which really, really needs us right now, right? And so it can be wonderful and appropriate for people who consider themselves atheists or agnostic. And it's also wonderful for those of you out there who do have a devotional practice or who want one, right? I think so many people on the planet, I know I'm one of them. I grew up Southern Baptist. I love Jesus. I will love Jesus till the day I die. It is in my bones. It's in my lineage. It's the thing I grew up with. And you can see how happy it makes me. Because I have that history of devotion, it's super easy for me to connect to that devotional way. And yet, like many of you, I grew up in a church that told me that, there was only one way, that some people were going to get to go to heaven and some people maybe not. And I knew in my heart that that didn't sit right with me. And so many of us grew up in traditions that might have been a little bit more fundamental or patriarchal that we're now thinking, I don't want to join that old religion, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is what we've done. We've said, ew, old religion is bad. Let's look for something else. And what's that something else that we looked for? I grew up in the 1980s. I see some of you out there, you grew up in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Some of you young ones out there grew up in the 90s. And oh my God, maybe a few of you in the 2000s, which is crazy, right? But I know you're out there. And what that time period was a time period of great, especially in the Western world, great materialism. The big shopping booms of the 1980s. I remember going to TJ Maxx and Ross and like filling up bags of clothing on sale, right? Like we all entered into this crazy culture of consumerism. Now, there's nothing wrong. I have on a really cute sweater right now, like nothing wrong with buying things you like, but that materialism has left many of us globally in a state of heart grief. We have a crisis of spirit in the world right now, especially the Western world. We have a crisis of meaning and we have a crisis of belonging. Not only do we feel isolated because we don't see one another as much since the pandemic, although hopefully that's changing, we also have a crisis of meaning and devotion. What modern science is now showing, guys, is that when we don't feel connected to some kind of mystical, meaningful, soulful path, our heart feels lonely. And our egoic sense of isolated self feels like I'm better than everyone and I'm worse than everyone at the same time. I don't fit in and I'm a weirdo, but maybe I'm better than these people over there. It creates a really gnarly situation where the ego isn't nested in something bigger than ourselves. So at Shakti School, what we're really attempting to do is offer a non-religious, non-dogmatic, non-sectarian place where people can come to find meaning in a way that's super personal to you. Again, it might be a reconnection to your old religion, updated in a way that makes sense to you, or it might be you creating your own new thing that is really endogenous to you and for you. But we're going to give you a place where you feel hopefully that you belong. We have women from all over the world. The only requirement is that you show up with your heart, right? And we have women that are moms. We have women that have babies and they bring them to class. We have women that are in their 70s and super young gals. Again, we have women that are super busy CEO types, power babes who are like, oh my God, I need this program because I want to reconnect to my feminine. And we have women who are super dialed into their feminine, but maybe they want to update their business and their health coaching careers. So we really span the gamut. And what I tell people is that first and foremost, our year-long program is for you. It's not about anyone else, but for you. And after you've gone through the program, you might decide that you've learned so much. In fact, sometimes we get the feedback too much. You've learned so much. You have so many tools. You have so many great teachers, so many great courses, so much great material that you cannot help but want to share it with other people and figure out how to serve the communities that you guys are from. Every single one of you women is uniquely poised to be a voice for your unique community. You know, I always say men don't listen to me, right? They don't, like maybe a few, but in general, we have to find communities that resonate with who we are and most importantly, what we've been through. The stuff that you've struggled with is the absolute perfect fuel for who you're becoming. And in that light, we use meditation in the same way. Today, I'm not going to ask you to stop your thoughts. Today, when we do the practice, I'm not going to ask you to not have feelings and to sit in a peaceful, calm, meditative state. Today, we're going to work with energy in a way that the ancients called Laya Yoga. You don't have to know the Sanskrit, but it's kind of cool that thousands of years ago, people were as smart or smarter than us. And they say Laya. Laya means this path of dissolution. Laya Yoga is the path of using energy and imagination, of using color and inner body proprioception, which means you find out where your shoulder is and you find out where your rib cage is and you find out where your heart is and you find out through taking your mind in and down your body instead of where most of us live, which is right here or sometimes right here, but usually up here. We start to actually integrate the fullness of all of who we are. So this form of meditation, I could talk about all day, but it's probably a great idea to just let you guys experience it. When we speak about meditation, I've outlined 7 core steps that might be helpful. And the first one is really important. And it's like, oh, the quickest one, but it's also kind of the most important step. And that's the miracle moment, right? You stop. You make the choice to do something different than what we normally do, which if you're anything like me, it's really easy to do this one thing. Does anyone out there do this thing called overthinking? Like, yeah, we all do, right? We live in the time of the overvaluation of the thinking. And so the miracle moment is this pause. Not only do we waste our energy and waste our time on overthinking, but I want to refer back to your nervous system. When you notice that you are spinning thoughts and you're going into the past or going into the future, that ludic loop we call in neuroscience, that's actually a sign that your nervous system has gone into a slight state of trance. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? It is like you're not in reality. You're spinning worry or thought or hope into the future, or you're going back into the past. And what we find when we look at the body and what the nervous system is doing, it's kind of a state of freeze and a trance-like state. We're literally in a trance when we're in overthinking. And so when you notice yourself ruminating, cogitating, it's not helpful. You're not figuring out a problem. No, you're just going over the same scenario over and over and over again. I want you to just go, oh, I'm in a trance. And why would we go into a trance, guys? because there's something underneath the surface of overthinking. Overthinking is a coping mechanism. There's something underneath the surface that we don't want to feel. Isn't that wild? Overthinking, I had to learn this. Overthinking is a sign that we are avoiding something to feel. I also used to think that I was so good at feeling because I knew I was like, oh, I have so much anxiety. I feel anxiety. And then I had a really good mentor teach me and tell me anxiety is not a feeling. Anxiety is the trance of overthinking. Anxiety is a way of avoiding a feeling. Ooh, okay. You know you have a good teacher when they actually make you a little bit annoyed. All right. So we go into that place of overthinking. The miracle moment is when you notice that you're going to unnecessary thinking. I often say you ring a little bell and it is a cause for celebration. Now, I want to repeat this because in the meditation world, many of us have been taught, notice your thoughts, and the thoughts are the problem, and they're the bad monkey mind, right? Come back to your practice. And there can be in me, and I don't know if you've felt this in meditation, this feeling of like, I suck. I notice I'm thinking, oh my God, I've spent the first 5 minutes of the meditation thinking, I suck. Right. And there's this feeling of like, ugh. And what the ancients say is no, when you notice your thinking, that's actually the cause for celebration because that's where the light in the mind has dawned. That's actually the opening and the portal to the higher wisdom. That's actually the clarity of light of mind, the true essence of your mind coming through and shining itself to say, look, you're thinking. So actually celebrating that moment of coming back is key. Miracle moment, I notice, I'm pause, and I come in, right? I have to do this every single day more than once just to stay on my game, right? To stay in my center. And so this practice that we're going to do, it can be a 20-minute, 30-minute, it can be a really long practice, but can also just be a 90-second check-in throughout your workday. Okay, so let's go back to the sacred steps. So you've got that miracle moment where you're going to stop and you're going to make the choice to practice. Sometimes it is the toughest step, and know that, if you come to Ayurveda school, we are going to provide a year-long framework that's going to hold you in this. But nonetheless, if you don't come, we want you to know you've got this, and we're over here rooting for you, even if we never see you, right? Like this is a part of the tradition. Anytime any of us around the planet make that decision to stop and be less reactive, it's like the angels rejoice. So we're going to be over here rejoicing for you as well. Number 2, you can come into a little bit of breath work and or orientation. So I want to say this, most of the time, this practice is really appropriate for everybody. But if you're working through trauma or you're really freaking out, meditation's not always the best thing to do. In fact, orientation can be a better option. What does that mean? Orientation means I actually take my attention outside of me because the inside feels too much, too overwhelming. So if you ever feel, oh, this is too much, I feel that sometimes, especially years ago before I had all these great techniques, I would just get so overwhelmed by my own meditation practice because my own feelings were too much to handle alone. I learned to go in, power through, go into the feeling no matter what. That is a very hardcore approach and not the feminine form. The feminine form says if you have a feeling that's too much, go outside, look at the trees, look at a plant, look around the room, orient with the eyes. I'm right now pushing my hand into a hard surface. Feel the soft surface of your clothes. Use the gateways of your 5 senses, taste, touch, but eyes and touch are really helpful. And what that's going to do, it's going to train your nervous system to be in reality. And for most of us, most of the time, reality is okay. If there is something to worry about, then you need to run and get help. But most of the time, we're just tripping out in our brains. So I wanted to just bring this in, that sometimes actually going outward can be really helpful for orienting later inward. One of my favorite practices to do, an ancient technique from Ayurveda called Samavriti. It's a fancy Sanskrit way of saying even breath. Sama means same, vritti means a wave. And so the inhale is the first part of the wave, the exhale is the second part of the wave, and just breathing in for a count of 4. Try it right now. Gentle pause, breathing out for a count of 4. Gentle pause. Inhaling in. If 4 doesn't work, any number will do, as long as that inhale ratio and exhale ratio are the same. And I want you to notice how quickly you get distracted. And when you get distracted, I want you to celebrate and come back. Okay, so let's do 6 or 8 breaths together. Inhaling, gentle pause, exhaling the same amount, gentle pause. Wonderful. How'd that go? How do you feel right now? We did 30 seconds or a minute of breath. I feel a little different, right? You can even hear it in my voice. And yet for me, and I wonder if for you too, was that sort of humbling? How long before you started thinking, right? So it really is like a muscle that we're building, this muscle of meditation. Remember, this is like something that we really specialize in Shakti School. Energy is a synonym for the goddess. You've heard of the goddess, in all these traditions. This is who we're talking about. There's a life force in all things. It's animating your heart to beat right now. It's moving the blood through your veins. It's actually causing all of your digestive processes. It's even the energy behind your thoughts. It's the energy that makes a frog jump and a dog bark. It's the energy that turns an acorn into an acorn tree. And I think you and I both can admit that we don't know how to do that. Us little humans with our egos, we don't know how to do that. Now, we can get really smart, but we still don't know how to do that. And so that is a sacred force. A lot of what we do in our world, especially our modern world, like I lived for 6 months in India, and I traveled through Africa, and I've been all through South America. And some of you have had these travel experiences as well, where people are still very much living with the land, right? And when you live with the land, especially I remember being in India and seeing the women in their beautiful saris and their colorful dresses, and they were squatting down on the ground, picking, weeds and herbs, and they were in that squat position. And even in India now, if you go to a bustling city like Bombay or New Delhi, you'll see all people in that squat position often. And it's a really healthy human position. And when you've done yoga and you get deep down in that squat, right? When you do that kind of squatting, your energy is moving. You might already know intuitively it's going in and down. And now just think about modern life, right? Driving a car, typing on the computer, being on our phones. It's a lot of up and internet. What is the internet? It's out in front of us. There's a lot of up and out. Now, this isn't necessarily bad, but anything in excess is imbalancing. So a lot of us have the tendency to have our energy moving up and out in front of us. And that affects our nervous system. Have you noticed, like, if you're on the screen for too long and you don't take a break to look out the window and let your eyes move around the horizontal plane of the room, you start to get a headache, or you start to get in a bad mood. Or for me, I start to feel a little bit disembodied. right? And some of us start to feel anxious. Why? Because if our energy is always moving up and out, it signals to the nervous system, fight, flight. That's what an animal does when it's moving energy up and out, right? Whereas if you're squatting down on the ground, you're okay, right? Then you can go with your mind wherever you want to go with that. Like, it's a vulnerable position. So you have to feel quite safe to be squatting, right? These things are things we go into really deeply in Shakti School. But for today, just know this. I know many of us struggle with anxiety and that feeling of disembodiment and brain fog, and we're on the internet too much. And so one of the core things, and I did this with the class, I think almost every single class, and that is when we meditate, we go in and down. And we use the idea that we'll use in a moment of a waterfall. We can imagine it going down the back body or down the middle of us. And this is a feminine form because most meditations, especially kind of Kundalini types, teach energy to go up and out. Well, we're saying, let's do the opposite. Let's actually take things feminine form in and down. And on a physiological level, this has effect of soothing, calming, centering, balancing the nervous system. Sleep medicine in your nervous system. And so that's why we say this Shakti School prioritizes the parasympathetic nervous system. If you want a place where you can be soothed and calmed and loved up and you belong and nobody, and it's not that we don't dance in the shadows, but that is our priority because the world that we live in prioritizes the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, so this is a wonderful thing, and I'll do this in the practice in a moment of we go in and down. Another way of initiating yourself and the practice that's quite common in all of our traditions all over the world is calling in these 4 directions. And we can do that on a sort of intellectual level, but we at Shakti School do it on an actual level. So we're going to feel our attention drop all the way down the body, explore what that feels like, and feel our attention go all the way to the right and all the way to the left. We got the 4 directions, which interestingly is that symbol of Christianity, which is the cross. But guess what? You could also see that symbol in the Jewish star. You can also see that symbol in the Sri Yantra of Hinduism. You can see this in the Egyptian Ankh. I mean, you can see these symbols everywhere. And what we're saying is we want to be all the way down in ourselves, and we want to be able to go all the way out on the horizontal plane. So this sounds quite mystical if you're like, whoa, but really it's just good anatomy and physiology medicine for the nervous system. Again, this is a personal thing. If you want to call in divine support, that's totally fine. And if that feels a little too woo-woo for you, totally fine. It can just be an authentic sort of petition to be connected to everything, the everyone. 6 will do it. And that's staying in the in and down, in and back in your energy. It's going to make more sense to feel it than to talk about it really. And then to just really just rest in this state, coming back to that practice of celebration when you inevitably will get distracted and go down the familiar paths. That's to be expected. I want to give us time to actually do a practice together. So wherever you are, we're going to do this seated. We'll probably do this around 8 minutes, 10 minutes. We're going to do a meditation together. Settle down, settle in. There's no difference in this moment. We're going to initiate some sacred time together and any other. It's like, why are we waiting? Why wait? You're not always going to have this healthy body. You're not always going to be this young. Some of you aren't young. Why wait? This moment can be the moment where you shift and make a real heartfelt aspiration to make any form of spiritual connection or meditation more important in your life if you feel called. So let's try it. letting the eyes close for a moment if that feels okay. Remember, if any time you feel overwhelmed, you just open your eyes and look around the room and do that orientation I taught you before. And as we begin, step one, we are doing this miracle moment where we're going to pause for about 8 minutes in our busy lives to humble our intellect. We can gently let the head bow in the symbol gesture of humbling the thinking mind and the analytical mind to the heart. Letting our mind come back into the breath, finding samavriti, that even inhale and even exhale. And even inhale. Gentle pause, even exhale. Find that rhythm for just a minute more. And you can be with every single millimeter of the inhale and every millimeter of the fabric of the exhale as if it were it. So often we're rushing the breath to get through as if we were going to get somewhere else. What if these next few breaths, like we could say to the inhale, you are enough. Enjoy it. Exhaling, this is enough for me. Enjoying it. Good. And then feel that you can let your attention move from the top of your head all the way down the head, the brain, through the chest. Feeling that you're asking and inviting the real you to come home to the body all the way down, move through your belly, move your attention down through your legs, all the way into the earth. So you feel that vertical pole of heaven and earth below, and you're kind of in the middle. And then come into the space of the heart. Move your attention from the right shoulder as far as you can imagine to the right side. And from the heart as far as you can imagine to the left. And so now you're all along the horizon. Now, can you feel both? And it may feel imaginary when you start, but that's okay. Just feel that sacred geometry of all the way down, in and down, and all the way expanded to the horizons. But you're coming from within your own heart. And by the way, in many traditions, this directionality was a way of calling in the ancestors, and it was also a way of calling in spiritual protection. And so I do really recommend this. You can see this as light all the way down and all the way to the right and the left. If you've got to go into a situation where you feel scared, or perhaps there's someone that you don't feel is wishing you the best, you can hold this protective direction. Good. And now we'll come into that beautiful back body meditation. And so again, we come up to above our head. And if you're laying down or leaning back on a chair or sofa, it can be really helpful. And that is, we imagine above the head. And I like students to kind of, if it's their first time, you can use your hands and bring your hands to the back of your head and give the back of your skull a little scratch, or even like a little pinch, just lovingly. And do the back of your neck and maybe a little bit that self shoulder rub. Maybe even reach your arms behind you and tap your shoulder blades. So this is your back body. Start to come down to your kidneys and down, down, down to that back of your tailbone sacrum area. This is the back body. And you can even give your little booty a little hello, a little rub down the back, squeeze the backs of your thighs, legs, your hamstrings down, touch your calves, all the way down to the heels. And so you can do that on your own later when you meditate, maybe a couple times, and it just starts to awaken the sensory nerves in the back of the body. Now, imagine, we're going to say that word, imagine, but eventually you might start to actually feel the flow of prana or energy. Imagine a waterfall behind you. Many of you, I hope, have had the experience of being under a waterfall. And if you haven't, you can imagine being under your shower. And you feel the water coming down the back of the head, the back of the throat, the upper back, coming all the way down the back of your body, the buttocks, and down the backs of your legs, all the way pooling at the soles of the feet. Then we'll go back up to the head. And you can imagine this waterfall. Start to do this on your own, just going down systematically down the back body. You can imagine the water any color you like. And usually like a color will come when I say that. That's a good color for you. Just trust that. And you can imagine that this waterfall is as thin or as wide behind you as you want. What's the girth of your waterfall? For me, some days it's small, some days it's really big. You can imagine the temperature of the water. Is it really cold? Is it really warm? Is it somewhere in between? And then this last piece, how quickly is the water going? So I went through it pretty fast, but you might want to move the waterfall like a honey waterfall. It's really slow. And some of you are like, no, I want to go quick. I want it to be like a real waterfall. Like it's going so fast. It's just pulling everything down quickly out of me that needs to go. For some of you, it's not even a waterfall. It's lava or it's maple syrup. It doesn't matter. Trust your inner guidance system that's offering up the right medicine for you today. Initially, you are going to need to systematically help your mind to stay on track. Thoughts and little eddies to the side might pull you away from the waterfall, but you celebrate and come back. But eventually you might just start to feel, oh, wow, I don't even have to try to do this so hard. There's just this intuitive sense of a force of energy that can move down me. This is a wonderful place to stay if you're feeling that overwhelm or anxiety. But for many of us, let's take it to the next step. Now you can bring your attention above the head and you're going to go straight down through the body. Whereas before we were on the back of our body, now we're going to go into our body. And guess what? Inside our body is where our feelings are, right? And so we can really feel without judgment as I breathe. I'm going to let that waterfall or that honey or whatever image you're working with, I'm going to let it go down into the skull bones, the brain, the eyes, the eye sockets soften with that liquid. Down the brainstem into the spine at the level of the throat. down the throat into that expansion into the shoulders and the collarbones, shoulder blades and rib cage, down through the chest, including the arms and hands. Feel that you're bringing presence and a sense of gentleness and warmth to yourself down your body into the belly, navel center, down into your low belly, down into the tailbone and the pelvic floor, and all the way down both of your legs, down into your feet, and into the earth eventually. Then we go back up to the top, and I'll leave you for a moment to go as quickly. You might do several more rounds of down. You might do just one. And as you're doing it, really, you can supercharge this by combining your attention plus a feeling of warmth and generosity and kindness to yourself as you invite yourself to come fully in and down your body. And if you're anything like me, you're going to have parts inside you, and it changes every day. That's why we do this practice every day. It's like an energy meditation wash cycle. We're just putting the clothes in the washer. We do it every day because some days you'll feel certain places are easier to take your attention, and certain places are a little sticky or numb, or like you just can't get your focus there. And maybe spend a little more time there, but we're not trying to change anything. We're just becoming aware. Good. Let's complete this round, making our way to the soles of the feet and into the earth. Just taking a moment to let it all go and just rest for a moment without any technique. Just notice how your mind feels. And we'll slowly start to open the eyes, looking around the room, taking a moment to come back. Noticing how you feel after 8 or so minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, where we gave the mind a task. This is a tiny taste of Shakti School, but also I hope just a valuable little piece that you can use in your meditation. These emotional energy, nervous system regulating techniques can be a game changer, a lifesaver. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of Tibetan monks and nuns and non-Tibetan Buddhists, but many Tibetan Buddhists just meditating for us all day long, right? Like the way that we keep the connection, it can be with people that you don't even know, is through these heart-based practices that wish 2 things for the world: more awareness, truth, and more love. Have a great rest of your day. Stay warm and see you soon. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.